My husband took everything in the divorce. The house. The savings. The car. Even the dog we once raised like a child. I didn't fight him. Not because I was weak, but because I was tired. Tired of explaining my worth to someone who only understood numbers. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, my ex-husband squeezed his lawyer's arm and smiled. He thought he had already won. I simply said, "No, Your Honor." And just like that, my marriage ended in less than 10 minutes. Outside the courthouse, the sky was gray, cold, empty, just like my hands. I had walked in married with a lifetime of memories, and walked out with a single handbag in silence. People think losing everything feels loud. It doesn't. It feels quiet. My name is Laura Bennett. I was married for 23 years. 23 years of cooking dinners that went cold. Listening to work stories I was never allowed to share mine after. Being told, "You're lucky. You don't have to worry about money." Lucky. That word haunted me. David, my husband, believed love was ownership. If he paid for it, it belonged to him. The house was his. The bank accounts were his. Even my time felt borrowed. When I once suggested a small art studio in the garage, he laughed. "Painting doesn't pay bills, Laura." So I stopped painting. Or at least, I stopped letting him see. The night before the divorce, I packed quietly. David sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "You're really doing this?" he asked without looking up. I nodded. "You'll regret it," he said calmly. "You don't know how hard the world is." I almost smiled. Because the truth was, I knew exactly how hard the world was. I had been surviving him for decades. The apartment I moved into smelled like old wood and forgotten dreams. One bedroom. One window. No disgusted. But it was quiet in a different way. A peaceful way. That first night, I slept on the floor. And for the first time in years, I slept without fear. 3 weeks later, I received an email. From David. Subject line. Utilities transfer confirmation. Cold. Professional. Efficient. That was David's version of closure. What he didn't know, what he couldn't see, was that the night I left, I took something with me. Something he never noticed. Something he never valued. Something that would slowly change everything. I stood by the window, holding a small, worn notebook. My art journal. The one where I had drawn quietly for years. Hidden sketches. Silent dreams. Inside it was more than art. It was proof. Of patience. Of pain. Of a woman who never disappeared. Only waited. David thought he had taken everything. But what he really took was the weight that had been crushing me. And what I took with me was something he could never own. Sometimes the greatest loss in a divorce is not what you leave behind, but what finally leaves you free. David believed life would feel lighter once I was gone. At first it did. The house stayed perfectly clean. No paint stains on the sink. No quiet humming in the kitchen late at night. No questions. He liked the silence when it belonged to him. He liked waking up in a bed that was always made exactly the way he wanted. He liked opening the fridge and seeing labels, order, control. Friends congratulated him. "You did the smart thing," one of them said over whiskey. "You protected what was yours." David nodded. That word again. Yours. Meanwhile, my world was smaller. But it was finally mine. Every morning, sunlight slipped through the cracked blinds of my apartment. It fell onto the wooden floor like it was searching for me. I drank coffee from a chipped mug and sat on the floor, my back against the wall. No TV. No noise. Just breathing. For weeks I did nothing. People think starting over means running forward. Sometimes it means standing still long enough to remember who you are. One afternoon, I opened my art journal again. The pages smelled like old paper and courage. I hadn't painted freely in years. Not without watching the clock. Not without guilt. That day, I didn't plan anything. I let my hand move. Colors bled into each other. Faces appeared without names. A woman standing alone near a window kept showing up again and again. She looked tired. But she was standing at the same time. David was shopping for furniture. He replaced the couch first. The old one had too many memories. The salesperson asked, "Do you want something warmer? More inviting?" David shook his head. No. Clean lines. Minimal. That was how he liked everything. 2 months after the divorce, David posted a photo online. New couch. Glass table. Caption, fresh start. People liked it. He felt successful. Complete. I didn't post anything. Instead, I taped one of my paintings to the wall. It wasn't perfect. The lines were uneven. The colors too honest. But when I looked at it, something inside me softened. For the first time in decades, I wasn't creating for permission. I was creating because I could. Money was tight. I worked mornings at a small bookstore near the river. The owner, a quiet woman named Anne, never asked about my past. She just said, "You're safe here." In the afternoons, I painted. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes for minutes. Sometimes I just sat and stared at the wall, letting old thoughts pass like clouds. David started noticing things going wrong. Small things at first. The coffee machine stopped working. The new couch felt uncomfortable. The house echoed. At night, the silence felt different. It pressed instead of rested. He turned on the TV just to hear voices. One evening, he found my old paintbrush behind a cabinet. A thin layer of dried blue still clung to the bristles. He frowned. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen me paint. Or maybe, he never really saw it at all. At the bookstore, and watched me sketch during lunch. "You're good," she said simply. I laughed. "I'm rusty." She shook her head. Rust means something valuable was left untouched for too long. That sentence stayed with me. Weeks later, and asked if I'd like to display a few pieces in the shop. Just on the wall near the poetry section. No pressure. No price tags if I didn't want them. I almost said no. Old habits die quietly. But then I thought of the garage. The laughter. The way my dreams were once treated like clutter. "I'll try," I said. My voice surprised me. It sounded stronger. The first day my paintings went up, no one noticed. The second day, a woman stopped and stared for a long time. The third day, someone asked who the artist was, and pointed to me behind the counter. I felt exposed, but alive. That same week, David received a letter from his lawyer. A minor issue with a property tax reassessment. Nothing serious. But it irritated him. Things weren't supposed to be complicated anymore. He drove home that night, past familiar streets, past windows glowing warmly. For the first time, he wondered what my evenings looked like now. The thought made him uncomfortable. He pushed it away. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, I sold my first painting. A young man bought it for his mother. "She lost her husband," he said. "This reminds me of her strength." I went into the back room and cried. Not because of the money. Because someone finally saw what I had been trying to say all along. David stood in his perfect kitchen, staring at his reflection in the microwave door. He had everything he fought for. So why did it feel like something was missing? Something important. Something he never thought to protect. I walked home with paint under my fingernails and a calm in my chest. I didn't know it yet, but the life David believed he had taken from me was slowly returning. And the life he thought he had secured was beginning to crack. Sometimes what looks like winning is only the moment before understanding loss. David started waking up earlier than usual. Not because he needed to, but because sleep no longer stayed. The house was too quiet in the mornings. No soft footsteps. No ketelgorming. No presence moving through rooms. He told himself this was freedom. Yet every morning, something felt unfinished. I, on the other hand, had begun to settle into a rhythm. Bookstore mornings. Paint-scented afternoons. Long walks by the river in the evenings. No one telling me what was practical. No one measuring my worth and outcomes. Just days unfolding gently. One afternoon, Anne introduced me to someone. "This is Michael," she said. "He teaches creative writing at the community center." Michael smiled kindly. No curiosity. No evaluation. Just warmth. He studied one of my paintings for a long time. "It feels like someone learning how to breathe again," he said. I swallowed. Because he was right. David received a call from his sister. "She's moving on," she said carefully. David stiffened. "Moving on how?" "I don't know," she replied. "She seems lighter." The word irritated him. Lighter. As if I had been carrying something heavy all along. That evening, David opened a bottle of wine alone. He walked through the house, turning on lights room by room. Everything was in place. Yet the house felt like a showroom. Untouched. Unlived. At the bookstore, Michael returned often. Sometimes he bought nothing. Sometimes he just talked. About stories. About people who hide themselves for years. You can live half a life and still call it survival, he once said. I felt seen without being exposed. David found my old journal in a box he had never opened. He didn't remember packing it. He flipped through pages filled with sketches and quiet sentences. Small hopes. Unspoken wishes. His chest tightened. Had I always been this alive? One night he dreamed of me standing in the garage. Paint on my hands. Eyes steady. When he called my name, I didn't turn around. He woke up with his heart racing. At the bookstore, and suggested something unexpected. There's a small local art night, she said. You should show your work. The idea terrified me. Visibility always had. But something inside me refused to hide again. I'll do it, I said softly. David drove past the old bookstore one evening. He hadn't planned to. He just ended up there. Through the window he saw me laughing. Not polite laughter. Real laughter. Something inside him cracked. At the art night, people gathered quietly. No applause. No performance. Just presence. A woman stood in front of my painting with tears in her eyes. I feel like this is me, she whispered. I nodded. It was. David sat alone that night, holding my journal. For the first time, he realized something terrible. He hadn't taken my future. He had taken my silence. And in doing so, he had given me my voice back. Sometimes the moment you begin to understand someone is the moment you realize it may already be too late. David stood in the doorway of the garage late one night. The light was still broken. The air still smelled faintly of dust and oil. But now the emptiness felt different. He tried to imagine me there. Brush in hand, music playing softly, the world finally quiet enough for me to exist. And for the first time he understood something painful. He hadn't just ignored my dreams. He had erased them. I began receiving emails from strangers. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet messages. Your painting helped me feel less alone. I didn't know how to name this feeling until I saw your work. Each message felt like a hand reaching through darkness. Michael invited me to speak at a small creative group. Not as an artist. Just as someone with a story. I almost declined. Old fear still lived in me. But I remembered the courtroom. How I said nothing. This time, I chose differently. David tried dating. The woman was kind. Efficient. Impressive. She asked him what he loved. He opened his mouth. And realized he didn't know how to answer. At the community center, I stood in front of a small circle. My hands shook. I spent years shrinking, I said. Because I thought love meant taking up less space. The room stayed silent. Not awkward. Respectful. David found himself rereading old emails between us. Short. Practical. Empty. He wondered how he missed the woman behind them. The bookstore displayed my paintings more prominently now. A small sign read, "Finding yourself after silence." I smiled when I saw it. David received a message. From me. Just one line. I hope you're well. Nothing more. It felt heavier than any argument we ever had. That night, David finally cried. Not loudly. Just quietly. The way regret arrives. I walked home after the talk, the night air cool on my face. For years, I thought being seen was dangerous. Now I understood something else. Being unseen was worse. Some endings don't come with anger. They come with clarity. And clarity, once it arrives, cannot be undone. The message sat in David's inbox for days. No subject line. No acquiescence. Just my name in the sender field. He opened it. Closed it. Opened it again. 3 simple words. I hope you're well. He had read contracts longer than our marriage vows. Yet those words left him unsteady. Because for the first time, they were not asking for anything. David typed a response. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. What do you say to someone you finally see clearly? After it no longer matters? I kept moving forward. Not because I was brave, but because going back was no longer possible. The community center asked if I'd like to host a weekly art session. Nothing formal, they said. Just a safe space. Safe. That word used to feel fragile. Now it felt earned. The first session, 5 people came. A retired teacher. A young mother. A man who had lost his brother. 2 women who barely spoke. We painted quietly. No instructions. No expectations. Just permission. David visited his sister. She listened without interrupting. You never asked who she was becoming, she said gently. You only noticed when she left. He nodded, because denying it hurt more than accepting it. One afternoon, David drove to the bookstore. He sat in his car for a long time. Then he left. He wasn't ready. A gallery owner emailed me. Small. Local. She had seen my work at the bookstore. I don't want polish, she wrote. I want truth. I cried again. Not from sadness. From release. David finally replied. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry it took so long. I read the message twice. Then once more. And felt nothing sharp. No anger. No relief. Just understanding. At the art sessions, people began talking. About loss. About regret. About all the versions of themselves they buried to survive. I listened. And realized how many of us confuse endurance with love. David stood in the house one evening, lights off. He thought of control. How it had felt like safety. How it had actually been fear. I replied simply. I hope you find what you're looking for. And meant it. Sometimes closure doesn't come from conversation. It comes from growth happening in opposite directions. Years don't always heal wounds. Sometimes they reveal truths. David realized this one quiet autumn evening, standing alone in the house he once called ours. The windows reflected a life that looked perfect from the outside. But inside everything felt hollow. Meanwhile, I walked along the riverbank, my hands smeared with paint from that morning's session. Children's laughter echoed from a nearby playground. The air smelled of fallen leaves and possibilities. For the first time in decades, my heart felt light. Not empty. Not aching. Light. I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photograph of one of my paintings, sold at the gallery months ago. A note. Your work helped me heal when I thought I never could. I held it close. Smiled. And knew. My life was no longer defined by what I had lost. David tried again to reach out. Not for reconciliation. Not for blame. Just recognition. But by then, recognition alone was not enough. I was living fully. And living fully meant I had space for nothing toxic. Nothing unfinished. Nothing that belonged to the past. At the community center, our weekly art sessions grew. People came, not for lessons but for freedom. To speak. To create. To feel seen. I watched them, sitting quietly among paints and brushes, and realized I had found a home. Not a house. Not a spouse. A home inside myself. David walked past a coffee shop one morning. Saw me laughing with Michael and a few of the art group participants. Sunlight catching in my hair. A small pang struck him. Not jealousy. Not regret exactly. But the undeniable understanding that life had moved forward. Without him. And yet entirely complete. That evening, I painted in the quiet apartment. The brush moved easily across the canvas. The lines and colors spoke of resilience. Of patience. Of rediscovery. I painted the woman I had always been, hidden beneath years of compromise. Sometimes, winning everything means losing yourself. And losing everything can mean finally finding who you are. David had taken the house, the savings, the car, even the dog. But what he never understood was that he had also taken my silence. And in taking my silence, he unknowingly set me free. I had my life. My voice. My art. My laughter. My mornings. My light. And for the first time in 23 years, I was entirely, completely, unshakably mine. The sun set over the river that evening. Golden light reflecting in the water. And I walked along it free. David had taken everything, or so he thought. The house, the savings, even the dog we had raised together. But what he hadn't realized was that the life he tried to claim could never have been his to take. My dreams, my voice, my inner freedom, they were mine alone. And with every brushstroke I had painted in secret, every word I had written in quiet journals, I had been reclaiming pieces of myself that he could never touch.